One of the biggest questions gardeners ask is, how do I not get ripped off when going to the nursery? I'm a huge advocate of starting as much as you can from seed, but I completely get the temptation to go down to your local nursery and buy punnets of seedlings. I do it all the time. I think it's one of the funnest parts of the hobby. But if you are buying seedlings, what should you avoid? What seedlings are bad value for money? What don't take to transplanting well? How do you pick out a good seedling? Well, if I had my time over again, there are definitely some that I would avoid. So here are my top 5 veggies that I will never buy as seedlings from nurseries and why, and they're all for different reasons.
So most gardeners will already know this one because it's pretty well known that you can't really transplant these, which means you can't take them out of a seed tray, roots and all, and then put them into a garden bed and have them grow the way that nearly everything else that we grow is transplanted. In fact, I talked about this on my TikTok once, and I actually got loads of comments of people not believing me that they actually sold these as seedlings in nurseries. They thought that it's ridiculous, but they do sell them, and I think a lot of beginning gardeners do get caught out by them. I'm talking about buying carrot seedlings.
And now that I've already mentioned this, I guarantee someone is down in my comments saying, but I grew carrots from seedlings and they turned out fine. Well, yeah, of course they did. That's the way that survivorship bias works. There have been people who jumped out of planes without a parachute and managed to survive. It doesn't mean that we should all do it. The issue with transplanting carrots is that
A carrot is just a taproot that sends itself down and then, once it's established, fattens out.
but if we touch that taproot in a way that that plant doesn't like, it can trigger a hormone response which will essentially say, don't grow in that direction, and you won't get a big, thick, strong, straight carrot. You'll either get tiny chubby carrots that concentrate all their growth at the top, or you'll have them fork off and they'll be weird, or the plant will just die off. And you could still be willing to take the risk on carrots, but the reality is carrot seeds are one of the easiest seeds to start because you direct sow them and they germinate really easily. You just need to direct sow them straight into some decent potting mix, cover them a little bit, water them in, and they'll start popping up. The next one is one that you don't have to avoid altogether, but there are some issues that you can run into with buying them from seedlings, or if you've grown them from seed yourself, that you need to know about so that you can choose the correct stock from a nursery. Because the staff in the nursery probably won't be able to tell you if yours is good or not. And that is anything in the brassica family, which includes cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale. I'll put everything else up on screen to make sure I don't miss any. An issue that you can run into growing these from seed in pots, buying them as seedlings from nurseries, is if brassicas become root bound, they're really prone to becoming stunted in growth, to the point that once you transplant them, they may never come back to life, and it might just be easier starting them from seed again or seeking out new stock. And really the only good way to tell is you have to pull the seedling out of the seedling tray itself and take a look at the roots. If they're spiraling around a lot, if they're any color other than a really nice bright white, or if the root cell just looks generally overcrowded, it's probably something to avoid. Here's a clip of me checking out a clearance table at a nursery, and I believe from memory this is a kale plant, and pulling the root ball outside of the cell, you could see how root bound it was. There's nearly more roots than soil here. Now, you can probably plant this and get away. This one's pretty borderline, but I wasn't particularly desperate for kale, and because it's got to be in the bed for a couple months before you'll be able to really tell if its growth is properly stunted, I didn't think it was worth it, and I chose to walk away on this occasion. By the way, if you want to know how to really clean up and save a lot of money at a nursery clearance, there is a pretty decent section on that on my video about starting a business from my home garden. So when buying any brassica from the nursery, especially if it's a more mature looking plant, always make sure to check the root growth. And if you are starting from seed and growing them from home, you do need to make sure you're keeping on top of potting them up or transplanting them into beds as needed. The next one is the #1 crop where nurseries rip you off by selling them to you as seedlings. And what I really mean by that is this is probably the worst value thing that you can buy as a seedling, when the value that you're getting from buying something as a seedling is the time that you're gonna save compared to starting that yourself from seed, as well as the amount of harvest that you're able to get from that. And this is probably the crop that nurseries, especially Bunnings, have gotten the best at merchandising and productizing it in a way that will make you pay the most amount possible for the same plant, that if you were to buy in just a little seed cell like this for only $4 or $5, they've managed to repackage it in a way that they can charge you $20, $30 for about the same amount of crop. I'm talking about lettuce. For this video, I had to make a special trip to Bunnings and to make sure that I could capture an example of what I'm talking about here. And yeah, they're everywhere. They sell these bowls of 4 or 5 lettuces. They call this like salad bowl, like gift kit thing that's about $20. What is in reality a couple of seedlings that if you were to buy it in a different size tray, it would be about $4. And even in that little seed tray, I still probably would avoid buying lettuce for a couple reasons. Lettuce grows quick and you're probably going to use it as a cut and come again vegetable, which means you come and you cut off, harvest some, take it away and then let the plant grow on a bit, and then it'll produce more leaves that you can then come and harvest again. And with lettuces, you get to do that about 3 or 4 times before the plant's not really gonna have enough sugars left to produce more growth. You might be able to get a bit more. Once it gets more towards spring and summer, lettuce will bolt quicker. And once lettuce does bolt, it's usually not gonna be that nice to eat. And lettuce starts from seed really quick. In front of you, I have 2 rows of baby lettuces that I only started from seed, direct sown straight into the bed about 3 weeks ago. And they're already this size, and in another couple of weeks, they'll be about the size that they need to be harvesting. And because of how quickly they start and how much you use them and how quickly they can sometimes bolt, you want to do a lot of succession planting with lettuces, which means that I'm probably going to wait about another week or so with these, and then I'm going to start a new seed tray of more lettuces. Then once these are done, I have more lettuces ready to go in the ground. And lettuce, in about a $2 packet of seeds, you get about 1,000 seeds. And I hate it, and I mean, I get it, I get why they have to do it, but especially don't buy those big gift bowls of lettuces, because they look great. They look like they're such a cool thing, like, oh yeah, I'll get this bowl, I'll put it on my patio, come out, harvest the yum yum lettuce for my salad. But then about 4 weeks later, you've got no lettuce left, and you need to go through the same cycle anyway. And what deal do you want? Do you want $30 for 4 to 6 lettuces? They might throw a parsley plant in there. Or do you want 1,000 seeds of lettuce, which is in reality probably a lifetime worth of lettuce? Especially because lettuce is probably the easiest crop to, as a beginner, let go to seed and either self-seed or harvest those seeds. It really is a couple dollars for a lifetime of lettuce. Now this next one is personal, and this really is one that nurseries only stock to prey on new gardeners. It is probably my favorite thing to grow, and if you buy it as a seedling, it's ludicrously bad value for money, especially compared to the other way of starting it. Now, the value you get as a consumer when buying seedlings from a nursery is you save some time depending on the crop. Sometimes buying seedlings is a really good idea because they can take a long time to get from seed to seedling, at least to a size big enough that they're ready to go into a garden. Or the other point of value that you get is you don't have to stuff around with trying to start from seed. And there are genuinely some seeds that are quite difficult to start, especially as a beginner. It can be something quite daunting. There can be some big gotchas with some specific cultivars of different plants that need to be started in a specific way. But with this one, none of that is an issue. You're getting none of that value with buying this as a seedling. And on top of that, the size of seedling that you'll be buying is like a week or 2 of growth. And it's something that is just, you can't not get it to germinate. It's something that probably in your pantry you might have some sprouting right now. And the price difference is ridiculous. If you're buying the seed version of this plant, it's going to cost you about $10 or $11 for 30 or so plants. Compared that to about $5 to $8 for maybe 4 of them. And it's something that you want a lot of. It's just like, man, I hate that nurseries sell this. It's such a bad deal. If you haven't worked it out, I'm talking about my favorite crop, garlic. Garlic. Mwah. Here is your ultimate guide to starting garlic. Here is a single clove of garlic. Here is a garden bed. You're gonna take it pointy side facing up, put it in the garden bed. About 1 inch below the surface, cover it up, wait about 4 seconds, and you have a crop of garlic growing. Or if you want to get it started even quicker, take something like a seaweed fertilizer or sea salt, dilute it to about 1 part this, 10 parts water, and then soak garlic cloves overnight in it and then plant them the next day, and you'll have them sprout up about a couple days quicker than ones planted directly into the garden bed would, which would normally be about a week or so. And 1 clove becomes 1 plant, becomes 1 bulb of garlic, and the seedlings that they're selling you is just the sprouting of a single clove, so they've managed to work out a way to charge you about $1.50 for 1. The next one is very similar to garlic in that it saves you time and effort. It's kind of similar to carrots in that a lot of the time these prefer to be direct sown, although it's not as big of an issue with deformed plants as carrots. But before I get to that, if you made it to this point in the video, odds are I've probably saved you some time, money, or grief, so please make sure to give it a green thumbs up. If you're really liking the channel, consider subscribing, maybe even checking out the Patreon. I put a bunch of extra stuff on there, including to all of my free members. Likes and comments really do help the video grow. It really helps the channel do well. I hate having to ask for it, but when I don't ask for it, I get less likes and comments, and then the YouTube gods frown upon me. No! Back to the video. This next one's a bit annoying to talk about because there's some devil in the details with different cultivars as this. I'm gonna try and speak very generally about this, but this is one that's just so easy to start from seed. A lot of the cultivars really like being direct sown. They don't like transplanting. And in at least my experience, these are probably the fastest seeds to germinate and sprout and turn into seedlings. I am talking about peas and beans. Well, most peas and most beans. If you're one of the OGs of the channel, you would know that one of my favorite, definitely my favorite winter veggie, maybe my favorite crop to grow in general, are snow peas, which is primarily what this planter is one of the #1 gotcha varieties of peas in that it really doesn't like being transplanted. You can successfully transplant snow peas, but you've got to take so much care not to really touch or disturb the roots. In fact, I've got a couple of overflow snow peas back here that were some volunteers actually over there that I managed to transplant, but I took a massive bowl of soil from around them and then put that whole thing in here. I didn't really go seed tray to seed tray. There are a couple in here that were transplanted from seed trays, but again, just heaps of time and care taken. Certainly on my TikTok, when I talk a lot about snow peas, I get a lot of comments of people saying exactly that every time they transplant them, they die. And there are a lot of species that are completely fine to transplant, but as a beginner, if you don't know how to work out what species those are, because they're usually not on the packaging, they're sometimes not even on the seed packaging, it's probably just one to avoid. And direct sowing all of them is really easy. I've got beans back here that I've direct sown, peas over here that I've direct sown. In fact, peas are so easy to start that I now start massive trays of them just to harvest them for their pea shoots. And all I do is I just put a whole bunch of peas in here, cover it with soil, and then and then you just get so many coming through. They're really, really easy to start. I personally would never buy them as a seedling from a nursery. And if you want to know where I get so many pea seeds for cheap, you should probably subscribe, because as part of my internet garden bed series, this is going to be one of the first crops that we're going to be growing. And I'll show you a bit of a hack for where you can get these from for about $4 for a few thousand, as opposed to about $4 for about 25. So as a beautiful golden sun comes out for my garden to bask in, let me know, what are some of the regretful seedling purchases you've made, or what's something you personally would avoid buying from a nursery again? For me personally, now that I kind of know what I'm doing, I start basically everything from seed. And in fact, I personally found seed starting to be a bit of a micro hobby within the hobby of gardening, that I'm now trying to find out what are some really challenging seeds to start to try and push myself there. It's really fun. Thank you, and I will see you next time.
Is this really happening? I can't believe it's true.